All right, recording now, and let's take a look at our README. Okay, first it tells us to create a copy and create a React app. Okay, so I use Yarn, so it's a little different, but usually you can just Google whatever you use. So I can say Yarn create React, and it should tell you how to do it. Okay, and right here. So we do it, if you're using Yarn, we're going to be doing it this way with Yarn space create React app. So let's do that to create our app. So Yarn create React app, and I'm just going to call it Team Builder. Okay, so that's going to start creating a new folder, and inside that folder we're going to have like a pre-made or a cookie cutter version of React. That's the one React made, and it's pretty much ready for us to work on. So let's just wait 1 second till that gets loaded. Okay, so we got our folder.
Hey, curious. I actually had to redo this because I just did create React app and it did not, it created all your base folders and it created the team builder folder, but it didn't put an app folder in or didn't do those extra little nice things that it does. Did you know that? I learned that, so I just thought I'd share.
Usually it should add the app.js.
Well,
So
when I went back with Yarn and I did it in Yarn, then it put it in. But when I just hit when I just did the create React app, it let me do that without any preface. And then it didn't
okay.
build out the folders.
We're using Yarn.
I used Yarn and then it
Okay.
built my folder out. But I just thought that was an interesting thing. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
that's weird. It should give you the folders. So I don't really know what went on there, to be
Huh,
honest.
interesting.
Yeah, so that never happened to me. But I look into it. All right,
I
so
I have a question, a really silly question.
yeah, go for it. No silly
So,
questions.
is it possible to have both Yarn and npm installed?
Uh, yes, it's possible. Like I have both, and but it's not advisable to use both of them in the same project
And
because
I've looked into this a lot, and I found the difference is that Yarn controls the NPM. NPM does not control Yarn.
mhm,
So if you use Yarn, sometimes, and I don't really understand what the difference is in this, that it will control the dependencies better. It won't overload your system like NPM can.
yeah. So basically, Yarn it's based out of npm. It was made as a solution because back then npm was really slow and it had a lot of problems. And Yarn, I'm not entirely who made Yarn, but they made it as a solution to npm. Okay, so let's go back to the project. And so we see with Yarn, because now I'm not 100% sure if it should create a folder like this one every time you do React app. So you pretty much have the same uh, folder structure you have usually on your projects, React projects. And right here we have our node module, so that means we don't have to do install because we already installed all the dependencies that are in right now. And let's just start it. Oh, actually, it didn't seem. Oh, I need to go inside that folder because um, our React app is inside this folder. So let's go in there.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
It has nothing to do with the code, but like your terminal, how did you get it to like show color like that?
Okay, so this is the sesh terminal. So it's this one right here. Let me send a link to that for that.
That'd be cool. Yeah, because I'm like, it hurts my eyes just staring at the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Okay, that should help. And it gives you, it also gives you like information or autocomplete. So if I do,
There's also a font called Firafont. If you haven't put that into your
yeah, actually I have Firafont on right now. That's a
Yeah.
really good font too.
it's a good one, and it took me a while to figure that one out.
on the VS.
Yeah.
It's not on VS, you have to download it.
Oh, it's all
But
online. Okay.
yeah, if you look in YouTube later, you should be able to find like the tutorial for it. I'm also going to send a link. It's
Okay.
a font that was made specifically for programming.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so we're into our team builder, and let's go. Let's let Jordan start. Mute my phone real quick. Okay, and we should get our project here. Let's let that load for a second.
While you're waiting for it to load, would you be able to just make the text a bit bigger just because I've got bad ISO?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
That should make it bigger in 1 second. Okay, that's better.
Yes, much better.
All right. Okay, so let me. Let's go into our app. And I don't know why this is not previewing. Oh, okay, I just closed it when it started previewing. All right. Okay, so let's start. So pretty much what's showing here is what's inside of app on our Create React app. So right here, I'm just gonna say apps, just to have like something to show and like visuals at first. Great. And now let me read me again, because I do want to follow the instructions a little bit, just to make sure I do them in the right manner. Okay, so first it tells us to import a use state, and all right, we need to create a use state hook to keep track of a list of team members, and each team member will have key value pairs associated with them. Sorry. And okay, so that, let's do it inside our app. Ignore the underline. Sometimes VS Code takes a bit, and usually because my RAM is pretty overloaded at the moment with all the tabs. All right. So now let's just create a state. And let's call it members. And let's equal it to an empty array.
You're recording this, right?
Yes. And also, actually, let me make a note to upload yesterday's because I didn't have a chance to do that real quick. All right. Okay. So we just created the state. Let's just console log it for now. And it should be an empty array right now, but later this is going to help us build everything else. All right. And I'm just going to close and open this again. So let's see if it loads. Come on.
And we have some quotation marks inside the use state instead of the array brackets.
No, and I'll mention why in a bit. Okay, so just ignore the underline. I was trying to fix that, but yeah, we need to have brackets, and we'll see in a bit why. So right here, let's just get started and return something. So we're just going to return that for now. And I'm going to an H1 that says add. All right, so the next step would be to create the other two, the other component, the form component, and let's actually get to it and create the member component also.
Good question. Did we supposed to have the class name app? Like, is that styling something? I'm just curious.
What do you mean by the class name app? Oh, okay. No, that usually comes with create React app because it's already styled. So right here we can see.
I deleted it then. Is that okay?
Yeah, I do leave it also because it's like the main wrapper for everything.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's just go to our source, create a folder for components, and in here let's create a form.js and a member.js. And actually, let's just copy and paste our app real quick. Okay. All right, so now we have our form. And let's also create a member. All right. And now let's import them. So basically, I just wanted to get everything connected before I do anything, anything more complicated. So let's import form. Come on. Okay.
Components as well. Is that why you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, it's just that my VS Code is acting up a little and it's not looking for them. So that should be it. And now let's import member. All right. And for now, let's just console log them, render them on their own. So let's render member and form. And now we should be I just need to get rid of these semicolons. All right. Okay, so now we see that everything's getting rendered. That's good. And let me bring back the app.css just so everything's centered. Great. All right, now let's go to README again. And I think we now are going to get started work on the form. All right, so we need to build a form using the inputs of name, email, and role. And we have to import the useState hook and utilize it while we learn about two-way data binding and render your form and set the method. Okay, so these can actually, they're really good instructions. I see how they can get a little confusing by reading them. All right.
That was me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did we skip the render your list of team members?
Right now, or we don't have team members. So
Okay.
if we render it, so right here I'm console logging members, and we don't have members yet. I could add some right here, but just for the app, we're gonna wait a bit till we show them.
Oh, okay. All right.
So my question was, your use state, you have it on your app.js. I put it on my form within the function that I created on my form. Does that make a difference?
Were you able to add edit functionality?
I didn't even get to. I can where I'm at is you could put in the name, email, and role, and it shows in the console, displaying on the console. But I can't get it to display on the page. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, so that I think you should be able to add members and edit them. It's just a layer down, if that makes sense. So right here, the way you did it, I would just leave form here and add the member on the form JS. Okay. But because you need the members state to be able to pass that to member and form. And I don't want to get ahead, but we'll see that in a bit. Okay. Right now, let's just go back and build our form.
So just so you know, I did build it that way too, and it works. And just like he said.
Okay. Yeah, so it's just the way we're passing information. So, Chile, were you also able to do the edit functionality from the form.js?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, I don't know. I'm kind of stuck. So I got it up there. You can type it in and you could submit it. That's how far I got. So. Okay,
so we're gonna get everything, and hopefully after we're done, if we still have time, I can go and we can check that way.
Okay.
Yeah. To see how we can solve it using that approach. Okay, so let's go back. Let's build the form. And actually, let me bring back the H1. I'm just going to say add a member. Then I'm going to say form. And inside of form, let's do H3s. And here we need a form with name. And this is going, so let's just label better. Okay, so let's use label, and this is going to be name. And right here, let's say name equals, and we're going to do it or input here. Okay, so I want to make this faster. I'm just going to select this one I made, and using Shift Alt and the arrow key, I'm gonna clone it or duplicate it times, and then let's say, what was the things we needed? Email, and role. Okay, and now if we save that, that should render. Great. So now we have perform, and let's add a button to it so we can click. So, and let's just make it so it says add member. And let me actually add another div. And this is just to make it so all the inputs are inside of the div. And that should bring the add member button down. Yeah.
So the can you kind of go over the HTML4 again? I don't really remember that.
Yeah. So right here we have a form, and pretty much the form, it's like listening for something, because in a bit we're going to use that event listener on submit. So if you press enter or if you press a button in it, it's going to fire that on submit. But we're going to do that in a bit. And then right here, and actually, there you go. And then I create a div to include all our inputs. And then I give them a label. I think that this label is more for accessibility too.
It's accessibility. That's what it is. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you might want to change foreign to form.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's make sure that renders. Yeah. All right. Okay, so now our second step is to handle the inputs. So to do that, we have to create a state. So let's say use state, and let's just call this input. And right here, our state is actually going to include our 3 inputs. And right here, yes, go for it.
So I'm just like a little bit confused. So do you have 2 use states, like one in your app.js and one in your form?
Yes, that's because we need something to handle, because right here we can type right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we cannot access this information yet.
Okay, and that's what that use state does. What does the one on the app.js do?
This one is the list of team members. So this one is going to be an array, and let's say it's going to have like team member 1, and then team member 2, and so forth.
Okay. Is that what's gonna print it on the page, like once you click submit?
Yes. So we're gonna map over these.
Yeah, I knew I had to map over something. I just didn't know what it was. I was just missing that. Okay, that makes so much more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, and then our input, we have to set it to whatever we're receiving. So let's say it's going to be an object with name, and that's going to be equal to an empty string. Email, that's going to be equal to an empty string, and role. And same thing, empty string. Okay, so now we have our input state, and now we have to set the values to our inputs. So right here, all right. All right, so right here we set our value. So this is pretty much what the input is going to be equal to, the text inside of it. So right here we can say input.email. And let me, like that. And let's do the same thing with the rest of them. So this is going to be input.name and input.role. And just for showing purposes, let's render that. And now, okay, that's fine. We're going to fix that in a bit. Okay, so now when we try to type, it's not letting us type. Does anyone have like an idea of why it's not letting us type right now?
You need to put type text, right?
No, but
Oh,
good.
you already have them. Okay.
Yeah, but good guess. So pretty much it's not letting us do anything because we already set our value. Our value is whatever the input has inside of it. So we set our value to these ones, and they're empty. So just to show, if we write email and we write test, now we should see that the email input has test as its value, and we wouldn't be able to change it because it's looking at our state, at our input state. So the next step is to handle that input, to make sure it changes and it stores the information we want. So we can use that information in a bit to add the members. So what we're gonna have to do for that, I'm going to add a name to each one of them, and this is to identify them, and we'll use this in a bit. So email and role. Right. Okay, and now we give it the name or identification, and now we're gonna add the onChange event. So pretty much this is listening for every time something changes inside our inputs. So if we go in and type something, this is going to get fired. And let's just call a function called handle input that we're going to do in a bit, and add these to all of them. Okay, and now let's create that function. So const handle input. This is going to get the event. And now right here, let's just console log fire. Handle input fire. All right, and now in our console log, whenever we type something, we should see that that's getting fired. Okay, so all of them work. All right. So the inputs are making the handle input function being called. And now let's actually just console log or E, and more specifically, or E.target, because that's going to be the input we're going to be working on. So let's do console log, and let's console log our target, and event.target. Right. And now that we consolidate our target, if we go in here and type something, we're going to get our target. So if you see, our target is going to be the input. And in it, we have access to type, name, and value. So right here, let's say target. Let's take a look at the name. So let's say target name. And let's access that name. So this is going to be this name right here. And now, when we type in it, we should get whatever name depending on the input we grab. So if I go in name, we're console logging name. If I go in email, we're console logging email. And if I go in role, we're console logging role. So now we're using this name. And what that helps for is if we didn't have that, we would have to handle each input individually. So we would have to have 3 of these functions instead of just 1. All right. So, and also let's grab the value. e.target.value.
Besides the console log, what's the point of what we're doing on between lines 10 and 12?
Could you ask that question again? Sorry.
So obviously, I understand we're doing a console log just to make sure it's working between lines 10 and 12. But what else? What's the point of doing a const handle import equals e? Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is going to be our input handler. So here on our inputs, we added the unchanged event. So this what it's doing. Every time there's a change in the input, it's going to fire the handle input function. And we're going to use that to change our state to be able to add to like store what we have on our inputs and send that to our members state where all the members are being stored. And we're console logging because we're going to be using these two, the name and the value, to change these right here.
So when the event's triggered on the I think it was called onClick below. So the handle state, sorry, unchange.
Yeah.
And then the handle input, so the handle input takes the data and then it changes the state. Am I correct?
Yes. So this right here is pretty much going to take whatever it's in our text fields and send it to our state. And then using that state, we're gonna grab this state. So we're gonna grab input and send it as a member. Because it's going to store everything in here for a bit.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so right now I'm just gonna add some text here. So, okay, just because I want to check what's happening with the value. Okay, so if we type something on name to fire our handle input, we see that our name its name and our value is equal to high G. Actually, it's just high. It never gets modified, but it does receive the first thing we type. Because if we keep typing, it's not going to change. But we see that the value is equal to high. And same with test. We click on it, and we see test, target name email, and target value test, which is the one we gave it here. And same with hello. So target name role and target value hello. All right. So that's just to check what is inside each input. Okay, and now comes the fun part, to handle the inputs and actually make our state change. Okay, so right here, what we're going to do is that we're going to say set input, because we're going to be updating this state. And actually, we're going to send in an object and then do the spread using the spread operator. Input. So basically what this is doing is we're creating an object and then we're adding sorry, and then we're adding the or what's inside of our input object. So we're adding the name, the email, and the role to this right here with the spread operator.
Remind me why I can't type anything on my input.
Yes, that's because we are still to handle the input. So right now we have a set value. So our input is always equal to this right here. So if I try to type something, it wouldn't let me type anything.
Mm-hmm.
We already set the value to our state. So now what we're doing right here is that every time we type, we want to modify this state right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we get our input. And how are you all feeling with this spread operators like this one?
I get it.
Okay, so
Anybody not get it?
Does it, that you just said it means you're creating an object, right?
yeah, and it means that we're sending everything inside our input. So let me console log it real quick. Console log. I'm just call it spread, and let's console log input. Oh, let me. Has to be inside of an object.
Is it the case of rather than changing the input name, so if it was say name Dav, it would just add another one, so it would almost create an array?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
You know, on line 14, by doing the dot input,
Yes.
are you actually just adding another piece to the chain rather than replacing it? Is that the difference of the dot?
Yes. So yeah, we're gonna add something else to it. So right here, we're only telling it to. So right. So right here, the spread, we're telling it to receive all the things inside input. So this is actually a new object, this one, but it's receiving all the information or like the context of the state. So this just because if we just send in like an object and so let's actually just send a string in. So what's going to happen it's going to change the whole state. And we don't want the state to change. We want the state to keep this format, and we're only going to fill these strings right here. So what we're gonna do for that, I know it's time we're gonna be utilizing the name and the value. So we're gonna create an object, get the stuff from input, and then when we do the spread operators, we can put a comma and we can modify the whatever it's inside in here. So right here, like for example, we can say name, and let's just say it works. Okay, so when I execute this handle input, it should change the name state to it works, and it should also change our value because our value is set to the input.name. So if I click one of these ones and press like space, now we see that this got changed. So basically, we're going to do that, but for every time we type something. So to do that, we know we already have the name and we already have the value. So here on name, we can use e.target name. So it's only modifying that the input we are typing on. So right here, I'm going to say e.target.name. So this should be equal to name, email, and role depending on where we type. So here it's name, here it's email, and here it's role. And then or set data, it's going to be equal to our value of the target. So whatever it's receiving, because if you see when I type, it's actually receiving one value. But if I type again, that value goes away, and nothing's being rendered inside of our input. So let's grab this target value, and let's equal it to that. So what this should be doing is that depending on the input we're typing it, it's receiving its name and it's receiving what happened in it. So now if we go in here, we can see we can type. And actually, let me get rid of this hello and console log or input state. And let's comment these console logs out. All right. So here we have our input, and check what happens when we start typing. Or now our input, it's being updated with the target value. So target value, that's just every time we type, that's whatever key we press, that's our target value. So if I press F, our target value is F, and it adds F to name, because that's our name on that input, and it keeps going. So now we're saving that in state, and now we can use this information to do other things. So now let's go back to now let's submit the members. So
why did you comment out one of the console logs? Just curious.
Oh,
the top one.
Yeah, I commented both of them out, but I uncommented one for to show the value. So yeah, I just commented out to keep it clean, so it's not a mess on my console. Okay, but now.
So sorry to interrupt. On line 14, I think it was. You've done line 14. Yes, you done e.target.name.
Mm-hmm.
How come email and role is also updated when you start typing into the live view?
Okay. So how come the input is being updated?
Yes, for email and role, because on line 14 it just says e.target.name.
Okay. So let me comment this out. So the name, it's actually this value right here. So we give a name to each input to be able to recognize which input we're typing on. And we can access that name using the e.target.name. So for example, if I type something here on name, let me save it. I didn't save. Okay. So if we type something here in name, we're going to get the target name. And if we type something on email, we're getting this email. And if we type something on role, we should be getting role.
Oh, I think I forgot to add the on change handle input. Do we put that on all of them?
Yes. So basically what that's doing right here, we're only updating the the target.name, because we can actually update one. So let's do something. So let's update email, but we're going to be updating email with whatever we're writing, but we're going to let's write a name. And you see that I'm typing on name, but that's actually going to email. So we have to specify where that should be going. So to make it simpler, we can just say e.target.name, or you could create three different input handlers. But normally it's easier if you have one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so now let's just add our form and unsubmit. And in here, let's just call it handle submit. And this is going to be another function. So let's create that, const. We're also going to get the event. So you can write it as E or event, doesn't matter. And here, let's just console log. And let's do submit fire. So every time we press enter or the button, these functions should get fired. So if we press enter, we see submit fire. And if we press the button, we see it gets fired. So right here, if you just check this out, it reloads the page after we press add member. So what do you guys think we could use to prevent that?
Stop propagation.
No, but it's prevent. It has to do with prevent.
Prevent default.
Yes. So, and that's inside the event. And let's add that, and that should keep our page from reloading. So add member, submit fire, and enter. All right, so now we're handling our submit. And now let's take a step back, because we're gonna go back to our app. And right now we're gonna do our function to add members. So our function, let's just call it add member. And this function is going to receive a member as an argument. So when we call it, we're gonna say something like add member input, because that's our state. And then in here, we're gonna use the set members. And in here, I'm gonna do another spread operator. Even though there isn't anything right now, we don't want to delete any previous members. So if we only say set members to member, that's going to change the whole members state to this. So I think we want to do, so we don't lose any other members, we want to also use the spread operator. So this is getting everything that's already inside of members. At the moment it's empty, but later on we're going to be adding more. And we're going to add member. Okay, so this should be getting the members from member. And we are going to be adding member, which is what we're going to be passing into our add member function, to the state. All right. And now that we have that, we can go to our form and actually pass that as props. So let's pass it as add. Let's pass it as the same thing, add member. And in here, I'm just gonna pass this function. And actually for now, let me comment this out and just do a console log to check if it's getting fired. Okay. So right here, I'm going to do console.log and add member fire. Okay, so we're passing as props to our form. Let's go back to our form again. Let's let our form know that we're going to be passing props, or that we're going to receive props. And let's actually just console log them real quick. Okay, save that. And now on our props, we see we get that add member, and we see that it's a function. So let's say on submit, we're gonna fire that function. So we go to props dot add member, and then let's just fire it.
Let's see.
And now whenever we submit, so if we press enter or add member, we should get this console log right here. So let's add member, and we get the add member fire. Same with enters. So now we're firing a function on our parent container, because we have to fire it here in the way I set it up, because here it's where the set members is at. And actually, we could pass set members and do this in the form. There's many ways of setting this up, but let's just keep it this way for now.
I was lost when you started adding the add members in the form container. Could you go back to that?
Yes. So right here, so this is just a function that it's console logging, and actually let's do this. So okay, so we're console logging the member we're going to be receiving. And right here on the form, since we're handling our state, you see how it's changing.
Mm-hmm.
So right here on add members, so I'm just sending that add members through props right here, that add member function, and I'm using it here using props.addMember. And let's just say add member input. So the input is this right here, this object. So when we do that, let's save it and add member. Right, and add member. And now we see that this add member fire, it's getting that object. And now we want to add that object to the members array, to the members state. So to do that, go back. We have these, which is, I'm going to just go through this real quick. We're setting the member, and we're going to set it to whatever it had before, and then add the new member, which is going to be an object like this one right here. All right, and now let's also console log.
On line, sorry to interrupt. On line 9, if you wasn't to use the dot 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 members and you just made it members, what would actually be the result? Would it just be the name would come through?
Actually, I can demonstrate that right now. So actually, I already had a console log for that. So right here, I'm console logging our state or member state. So now let's just go and try it. Because when we add a member, it should execute this function, and that should add the member to our members array. So let's just add some members, add member, and now if we see our members array, we added that member there. And then let's add another one. And what this is doing, it kept the last one and it still added the new one. And if we remove member, so this is what you're saying, just passing member?
Yes, or just remove the 3 dots. But is that the same thing?
Okay, so if we remove there we have to have the 3 dots, because that's only like we're grabbing what this state already has. So if we don't have the 3 dots, this is what would happen. So let me. So we're still doing everything well, and then we have our member. But when we try adding a different member, what's going to happen is that it's going to replace this member right there. So if add member, and we still only have one member, and we want to have more than one. So for that, we set the member, and then using the spread operator, we're checking whatever it's on members. So it's saying, okay, fill this array with what member the members arrays has in it, and then add a new member.
That was brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So mine is giving me an undefined. Like it's doing it right in the sense it's giving me the row, email, and name as I'm typing it out, but then right after that it says undefined.
All right, could you send me this on your Slack? So this function.
Yeah.
And mine is giving me an empty array.
Okay. Let's see. So make sure everyone's passing the props and also console log them. So right here on my form, I'm console logging props, and that way I can check that I'm actually receiving.
Yeah, I didn't pass props.
Yeah. So that way we can check that we're actually receiving the function. So right here on props, on our add member, we can see the function.
Are we passing props on the app.js?
Yes, we're passing props from the app to the form.
Darn it. What is saying it's undefined? So what am I doing?
And what says it's undefined?
Okay, so I had props inside of the parentheses in the app part.
So you have props here?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't need props there. You only need props on the argument of the component when you're receiving props.
But the minute I deleted it, it's saying props undefined.
Oh, you're consoling. I think that's because you're consoling props inside your app. You should be consoling props inside your form where you're receiving them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would props be the parameter that's inside like the function that everything is in, or is it like the individual?
Yeah, so props, it's just where it goes. So yeah, so right here we're sending props from app. So on app we don't have to do anything. We don't have to do this.
Okay.
Because we're not receiving because we're not receiving props.
Mm-hmm.
You only do that when because you're telling your component that you're going to be receiving something, and that something is going to be called props.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing here on this component. And
Okay.
then we're consoling props on the form.
Okay, let me.
Yeah, I think what I was doing wrong is I was adding props to the nested function, to the first nested function. You have like the one on the console log. That's where my props was at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so make sure you always check whatever you're sending them. All right, and now that we're able to add members, now we have to display them. And to do that, actually, let me go and play a little with my members. So right here, I'm going to say H2, and I write name, and the name, let's use a p tag. And right here, actually, let me just okay, so right here, pretty much I just create a really quick member function. So right here we have the name, the email, and the role, and we're gonna be receiving that information via props. But before we do that, let's actually make sure we're receiving props. And let me comment some console logs, so to clean our console. All right. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is now we have to map through the members state to render one member component for each one of the members inside the array. So what we're going to be doing here is that we're going to use the curly brackets to write JavaScript, and then we're going to grab our members and map over them. And from map, we're going to receive each member. And right now, let's just console log that. So map and member. All right. And let's try adding some members. So at first, our maps, it's going to be empty because there are no members inside this array. So it's an empty array. But once we start adding, we see our map. Now it's mapping through one. And then if we add another one, we're actually start mapping through them. And since we're mapping through them, we're getting each object. Okay, and I'm going to go back real quick to the form.
But I'm still getting an empty array though. I don't understand.
Do you have this function?
Yes, I do.
Are you passing that function to the form component using props?
Using props. Yeah.
So like this?
Yes, is exactly it.
All right. And then inside your form, are you handling submit?
Let me see what the submit looks like.
So you should have an onSubmit in your form and a handle submit function.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I have a.
Okay, so that may be why it's not working.
Okay, let me try it.
Yeah, and while we're here, I'm actually going to also update the input. So whenever we press submit, it gets rid of all the text. So that should be really quick. I'm just going to use the set input. And I'm going to copy and paste the initial state of the input and just add it here again. And what this should do is that whenever we submit something, it should remove the value again. So now we have empty inputs. Okay. So let me remove the console log again. And again, from our members array, now we need to map through them to create one member component for each one of them. So let's do that. So let's say member. Okay. So let's see, let's add these ones in here. I think unexpected token.
You're missing a parentheses at the end before the bracket.
Oh, I think. Oh, okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So now let me get rid of. Yeah. Okay, so we're returning member. And now we're not passing props to it, but just to show, let's create a couple members, and it should return a member for each one of them. And we have 2 members. Okay, so now we have to pass props. And what we're going to do is that from props, let's say we're going to pass a prop called member, and just pass the member information, which is going to be these objects. Okay, so we're passing that as props. And then on our member.js, we're receiving props, and actually it's just console log member props and props. And let's add some members. Let's add a couple. Okay. So we see on our members from our app.js. So this is that. We have two members, and then our member is receiving those from props. So since we're creating 2 of them, because we're mapping to an array of 2, the first one is receiving the first member as props, and the second one receives the second member as props. And now we can use those props to actually get our member information in it. So right here, that's what I am using this p tag for. And let's just do props.member and .name. So we're accessing these ones right here. This is going to be email. And it's going to be role, sorry. Let's save that. And now when we add a member, we should be getting that member right here. And let me actually do them in a different way so it looks better. So let's do the label way. So let's change these for label. I'm just doing this for so it looks a little better. So let me check out that looks real quick. Actually, let me just add it like this. Sorry for the change. It shouldn't really affect much. It is more for the visuals, so it looks a little bit better. All right. And let's get rid of this H1. Great. Okay, now that we have our member, now we can add members. So we have that functionality done. Now we have to add the functionality of editing our members. So actually, before we add the key, to edit a member, thing we do need is a way to identify the member. So I'll touch on that in a little bit, but it's just something we need to know. We need to identify it, because we want to when we edit one, we want to identify which one of those it's inside the members array and modify that array. So now to edit, we also have to create another state just to handle the editing state. So this is going to make a little bit more sense in 1 second. So we're going to be using useState on our member.js, and let's call this isEditing. And let's set our initial state to false. Okay. And let's add a button. And let's say edit. And on click, let's say that it fires a button that's it's a handler function called handle edit. So basically what we're going to be doing here is that handle edit const just name equal anything. Actually, we do need I think we do need prevent default, so I'm just going to add an event just in case. And whenever we press this edit, we want our edit a state to be equal true, or to be equal whatever the contrary of what it's equal when it's pressed. So let's do that real quick. So when that's clicked, let's set isEditing. And let's set that to using the exclamation mark. So basically we're setting isEditing to whatever isEditing is not. So if it's false, it should set it to true, and if it's true, it should set it to false. And let's console log that state.
Are you going to be posting the solution? I just got a little behind, but I'm getting more.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll post the solution and the walkthrough video.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And setting. Okay, so now we should see a new button when we create it. Okay, and whenever we here we can see the edit is false, and whenever we press edit, it switches back to true. So false, true, false, true. So now what we want is that when we press edit, we want this to change to a form. So to a form like this one. So we're able to edit it on here. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create an if statement. So let's say if is editing is true, we're going to return. And let's actually just return our form. What do we have here? So let's return this whole thing and modify it just a tiny bit. So there we have our form. And I'm going to change this add to edit member. And I'm going to remove the unsubmit for now, because we're going to use that unsubmit again for the update. And bring my input state and input handler there. So pretty much we're just like recycling our code right now. Okay. So let's get that there. And now when we add a member, and if we click edit, this should change to a form. And now it changed to a form. Okay. And now let's actually add the in here. So you see how these are empty?
Mm-hmm.
And since we're editing a member, I think it would be better if we get to see what that member is, what that member's name, email, and role is. So to do that, just the way we're receiving those here, so props member.name, we can set our initial state to that. So on name, email, and role, we can set that to what we're receiving in props. Okay. And just let me add a real quick another button. So let's say button, and let's call it go back. On click, and these ones we're going to do the handle edit, just in case we didn't want it to edit it. Okay. So let's try it again. I know this looks a little complicated from what it was before, but basically we're doing the same that we did on the form. So right here, let's add a member. And now we see our member, and when we press edit, we actually keep those Fs in it, so we can see what we're editing. And if we press go back, it's going to go back to that member. Okay, so now we got that. We still haven't added edit functionality. We can write here, and that's going to let me. Okay, let me console log that real quick. So whenever we type something, we see that F stays there, and we're just adding more to it, or getting rid of it. And yeah, so we got all that working. And actually, let me change these from add to update. Okay. Now that we have that done, now we have to handle the update. So to handle the update, it's going to be something really similar to what we did here. Sorry. It's going to be something similar to what we did here in the handle submit. Okay. So now, where's my form? And let's add unsubmit. And let's call this edit, update handler. And
after you're done, would you mind, if you have extra time, would you mind like going over this again and like going over like the functions and which individual function, like what it does? Because I'm just having trouble fully understanding that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so we created the update handler. And here we're going to use event because we want event.prevent default because we don't want to reload the page. And let's just console log it, so make sure it's working. So if we add a member, press edit, and then press update, we got update fire, and I forgot to add prevent.default. Okay, let's do that real quick. Add member, edit, update member, update fire. All right, so now we're getting this to work. And if we see what we did on the handle submit, we use the prevent default for it not to reload the page. And then we sent the add member function through props to pass the input. So that would be our object right here. Into this function, and this function updates the members state or members array and adds a new member. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is that we're going to create another function called update member. And it's going to be pretty similar. So update member, and then we're going to do set members. And this might look a little confusing at first, but I'll go over it real quick on a Replit too with a simpler example, which I think I should have somewhere. So we get that array, we pass in the previous members, and then what we're gonna do is that, let me open a Replit real quick to show that in a simpler way.
But is this the syntax? Like we'll get used to seeing it like this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, but let me, because we're going to do something a little different here, and what we're going to do, I'll just open this one. Okay. All right. So in this one, I'm just going to create an array real quick. And I'm going to give that array some numbers. And then I'm going to map through that array. All right. And inside that array, I'm going to do an if statement. So what we want to do is that we want to update only one of those. So we're just going to say, since we're going to check each one of the items, we're going to say if array, actually this is item, if item it's equal to 3. So let's say we're changing the one with an ID of 3. return change. And if not, if item is not equal to 3, return item. And let me do some console log so it makes more sense. Let's say item.
Do you not need the word else if you only have one, if you're only
no, so this else, it's only if it's not this. So what we're doing is that this is running, this whole function is running. So what it does first, it checks if item is equal to 3, and if it is, it's going to return changed, and if it's not, it's just going to ignore this if statement.
Okay.
And return this right here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So right here, I'm just gonna console log matches. All right. Now let's run it. Okay, so we're going to do something really similar with our members. So we see that we're going to ID 1, nothing happened, so it just returned the item. And since map is returning like a copy of our array, that's what it's doing. So it sees 1, it doesn't see a 3, so it returns that item. So it's returning 1 into here. And then same thing with 2, it's not 3, so it returns just that item. And then on 3, we see that that matches. So instead of returning item, it's returning changed. So what's happening is that since it matches, it returns changed. And then it keeps going, and it's 4 and 5. That's not equal to 3. So it just sends those in here, if that makes sense. So we're going to do something really similar with this, because we only want to modify the item we wanted to modify. So we only want to modify the member we're updating. And to do that, I'm just going to add something real quick to our members. So I'm going to add an ID, and that's just to identify them. And I'm going to add an ID of null. And okay, not here. Actually, yes, I need that there too. But let's go to our state and add an ID of null. Okay. And now on our on our add member, we're gonna grab that same input. So we're again using the spread operator. So basically, we're just adding that input into that object. And in here, or ID, I'm just gonna set it to random, so a random number, and we can do that using math.random. Okay, and the only thing this is doing is adding an ID to each of our members. So when we click add member, it sends the input. So with all our name, email, and role values changed, and then we add a ID number to it. So this is basically what we're doing on the members right here. Okay, and now that we have the ID, let's just test it real quick so we can see it. And I didn't save. Okay, let me see if I'm missing something. I don't think I am. Okay, add member. And now if we check our members, we see that we just gave that member an ID, and it's just a random number. And now, if we press edit, right here, we want to do something really similar that we did here. So when we send that updated member, we're going to receive that member, and that member is going to contain an ID. So now we can compare those two IDs and see which one it's the one we want to modify. So we're pretty much going to do the same thing that we did here. So members, and right here I'm going to say members.map. So I'm going to map through all the members that are inside our members state. And right here, I'm going to do an if statement. So let's say if, actually, let me go back a little bit. And let's make the argument uMember, so updated member. So it's not the same as our map. So map is going to give us every member. And for those members, let's do an if statement and check if member.id is equal to updated member.id, we're going to return the updated member. So basically, we're returning changed. So we're returning the updated member to that ID. So that means that it's only going to modify the member with that ID. And if it doesn't have that ID, let's just go and return member. Save that. Update member is assigned but never used. Okay. So now we just create our function, and now let's just send that function to our member like we send the add member to form. So let's say update member, and let's send that function through props. All right, and we're almost done. So now this member.js, it's receiving, there you go. I think I'm still consoling props, and I'm not. Let me, okay, let me console right here. Okay, save. Edit, and yeah, just let's check the props. So on our props, we see that we're getting our updated member function, and we can actually check this function, and there's a bunch of stuff going here, but it's the right function. All right, so now that we made sure we're receiving it, on our update handler, what we're going to do is that we're going to use that function, so props.update member, and we're going to send our input. And actually, I almost forgot to add the ID here. So it's going to be the same thing as this one. Okay. And actually, while we're at it, let's also change its editing to its other state. So it should be true, and then when we press update member, it's going to set its editing to false, and that means we're going to go to the default view. Okay, so
on line 26, I know we done it a while ago, but what's the prevent default for?
Oh, okay, yeah. So that prevent default, actually, let me remove it real quick. So what the default response when you act on an event is that it's going to refresh the page. Sorry. So without it, if we press update and form submission canceled because form is not connected. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Why aren't you? Okay, so I'm going to use another one of those. So I'm going to use the form. Just because we don't have much time, because we already went a little bit over. Okay. So right here, when we submit one and add member, you see how it reloaded the page? And we don't want that, because once it reloads the page, it sets our state to its default. So that's why we added a member, and now our member is empty again. So when we add prevent default, that prevents the page from reloading. So when we add a member, we never see it reload and it still works.
Makes sense, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And okay, and now let's edit. So we're pretty much done by now, but let's just see if edit works. So when we press edit, that fires the handle edit, and that changed its editing to whatever its editing is not equal to. So if it's equal to false, like right now, and I press edit, that's going to change it to true, and it's going to show this. And let's edit that member, and right here we're going to say hello edit. And if we update that member, because of the logic we did down here with the map, if we update member, now we should get the updated member. And we can go back to. Okay, so right now our app is pretty much done. So let's do a quick walkthrough of what the whole application and what it's doing. Okay, so I wish I could have charge on my tablet and I could draw a quick diagram, but I think I'll draw one in a bit and I'll send it. And let me make a note of that. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, so let's go over it real quick. Okay, so see, so we have more space. So first we start on our app. On our app, we have a members state, which is where we're storing all our members. So it's an array of members. And we're, it's okay, so I'm gonna go from up to down since we already did everything. And then we created an add member function to add a member to the members state. And what we're doing here is that we're going to receive a member when we do this function, and then we're gonna call set members and use the spread operators to get all the previous members and then add the new one. And then we also created an update member function, and this function is going to receive an updated member, and it's going to modify the state or update the state. And to do that, we're going to be using a map. So we get all the members inside our state, and then we map through them. So we get a member, and then inside of that map, we're going to check if the member ID, we're going to check if the updated member ID matches with an ID of a member that's already inside our members array. And if it matches, it's going to replace that member with the updated member. And if it doesn't match, it's just going to leave it as it is. Okay. So then let's go to the form first. We're rendering form, and we're passing the add member function through props with a prop name add member. And then inside of form, we're receiving props on form. And right here on form, we created a form right here using labels and inputs. And we also created a state that is equal to the value of the inputs. So that's where they're empty. And then for the inputs to work, we have to handle them and make it do something when something's happening on them. So for that, what we did is that first we set the value of the input to the state, and then we added a name to recognize inside which input we're working on. And then we added on change on all of those inputs and called a function called handle input when something changed inside that input. So, okay, and now when something changed inside that input, so when we type in it, the on change is going to get fired, and that's going to fire the handle input function. And right here on the handle input, we have prevent default, so we don't reload our page or refresh our page. And in here, we're getting the add member function from app.js from props. And inside of it, what we're doing is that we're sending the whole input, and then we're modifying our ID because it was set to null to a random number. And now actually, I forgot to the handle input. That was the submit, sorry. Handle input, what we're doing is that we're getting the target name, so whatever we set the name to, and we're getting the target value, whatever we're typing in the input, and we're setting that we're receiving the whole input we had, the default input state. So we're receiving all that, and then we're going to modify each one of those individually depending on the target name. So depending on which input we are working on is the one we're going to modify. And then inside our form, we have an onSubmit. So whenever we press an enter inside of any of our inputs or press the button, it's going to execute this handle submit function. And this one, we receive the event, and we use prevent default so it doesn't refresh our page. And then I already went over this one. So we are sending our member and giving it an ID. And then we're going back to our default input. So when we type something and add a member, it goes back to blank. And then right here on our member, since we already have items inside our members state, we can map through that state, and we're going to receive each member, and we're going to render the member component, and send the member through props with a prop name member. And we're also going to send our update member function to update a member as update member. And then inside of our member.js, so let me see if I can. Yes, that's better. Okay, so right here, first we have our main return, which is just like the display of the members. And then to do more with it and be able to edit it in the same place, we added a is editing state, which is set to false. And using that state, we're doing an if statement. So if isEditing is equal to true, when we click this button, we change it to whatever it's not equal to up here. Sorry, up here. And using that if statement, if isEditing is true, we're going to return a form, which is pretty much, it works the same way than the form in form.js. So I pretty much copy and pasted it. We just change it some things. And I think I heard someone speaking. So does anyone have a question?
I think Eunice just has her mic open.
Oh.
It's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm like talking.
Could I ask about the app?
Yeah, so
In the app.js file between lines 11 and 17, you did an if statement for user ID. Could you just explain what you were doing there, or
yes.
why you're doing it?
So
is it a case of if, for example, you ordered a user number 5, you're not allowed to create another one, or are you doing something different?
So right here, what I'm doing is using this if statement. So map, for this, to explain this, we have to a little back to map. So map, and actually it's, okay. My internet will load. Okay. So map, where is it? Right here. So a map object iterates over the elements of an array, blah, blah, blah. And right here, it returns an array of every key value for each iteration. So what it's doing right here, so let's run this. So basically, what I'm doing here is that I have an array of numbers. Let's just think these numbers are IDs. And right here on our map, each item is each number, and we're console logging those numbers. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if the item, so if the number is equal to 3, so imagine right here we're modifying the a member with the ID of 3, like that. So what it's doing, if that matches, so when the item is equal to 3, instead of returning the item, it's going to return changed. So what's going on here is that first it goes through item 1, and then it's going to see this if statement, and then it's going to check for this condition. And since item is not equal to 3, it just returns that item into the new copy of the array. And same with 2. So it sees a 2, and then it sees the if statement, and item is not equal to 3. So it's just ignoring the if statement right now and going straight to this return right here. So it's going to return the item again.
So it's kind of the case of it just doesn't allow duplicates of the same ID.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
So it kind of just doesn't allow duplicates of the same ID.
No. So this is more for just finding that member. And for the duplicates of the ID, that's where right now we have it set to a random, which there is a chance that we have like an ID that repeats, but we would need a lot of members. But later on, you're all going to see the about IDs and all that to making them so they don't repeat ever. But that's more that's later on the course. So right here, very much we're only finding. So these are original array, this one right here, and we're checking it. So, and then we stop on item 3. So right here on item 3 is going to see this if statement, and item it is 3 is equal to 3. So instead of returning that item, is going to return changed. So right here, it's what we're doing. If the member ID matches with a member, if the updated member ID matches with an member ID inside of members array, instead of returning the member, we're going to return the updated member. So right here on item, it sees that it's not, that item is equal to 3, and instead of returning the item, it's returning changed. So if we check, so right here in matches, and let me clear this, it matches, and since it matches, instead of returning the number, it returns changed. And then it keeps going till the array is over. So it goes 4 is not equal to 3, so it returns that item. And then it's 5, and 5 is not equal to 3, so it returns that item. So now if you see, we have a modified array. So this is the original, and this is a modified one. And we only modified one of those items. So that's basically what we're doing right here. We're checking through all that array, and if the ID matches of the updated member, it's going to it's going to return the updated member, and it's only going to modify that member. So it's only going to modify one of these members. Okay, did that help? Oh, hopefully it did. All right. And yeah, sorry, because we're a little way past, and I just want to finish this. And okay, so right here on member, we already mentioned about the is editing. So when it's editing, the form pops up, and then in here we're also passing the update handler. So on submit of the form, like in the form.js, we're gonna add a function, and that's going to be our update handler. And inside our update handler, we have to use e.prevent default, so it doesn't reload our page. And then we're only going to send to the update member, we're going to send our input, which is going to be whatever we edited. So this one says edit. Let's change it to hola. And when we click update member, this is sending that to this if statement. And since the ID of that member is the same as this one, it's updating it and returning the updated member. Okay, and I think that's it for this one. Sorry for the last going over it real quick, but we went 20 minutes over time. But yeah, hopefully this helped. And if you all have any questions, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them. And I'll post the code for this project in a bit on the channel, and I'll start uploading the video to YouTube to post it too.
Thanks. Thank you, Margal. I'm going to send you a reminder on that, just to FYI.
Yes, please do. Please do.
How long does it take for the video to render?
So the video takes around, it should take around half an hour, or no, around like 20 minutes to render to my computer. And then it should take another 30 minutes to upload to YouTube.
Okay, great.
All right, so I'll see you all during the guided lecture. And yeah, it was a good TL hours.
Thank you, Margal.
Yes, you're
Thank
welcome.
you for your time.
And make sure if you're here before you all go, make sure to write your name inside the attendance thread, just to make sure we're keeping track of everything.
Got
If
it.
you haven't yet. All right.
Okay.
Well,